thanks, Mark. So we have a tech talk right now. So this is sponsored by industry, sponsored by Biologics. So given all that we've spoken about BMAC over the last couple of days, I thought I'd just speak about the instruments that I used to obtain my Marrow aspirate and why I chose that. So the goals of orthobiologic treatments is basically, ideally, you want to try and create a live cell autologous orthobiologic that you can use to, for a variety of reasons. So help improve healing of your bone, your cartilage, your soft tissue, try and help improve fracture healing, minimize risk of non-union, speed up healing, potentially get these patients earlier weight bearing, earlier return to work, earlier return to sport, but overall try to improve their outcomes. So you want to have something that's safe, doesn't react, you can minimize the donor morbidity and minimize any increase in operative time. So why bone marrow aspiration? So as we've alluded to over the last few days, bone marrow aspiration contains mesenchymal stem cells, osteoblasts, lymphocytes, stems, hematopoietic stem cells, progenitor cells, BMPs, growth factors, and we don't really understand how all these things work necessarily, but we know that they can potentially have a positive effect on healing. And ideally, if you can do this and generate, again, a live cellular autologous biologic, that would be the best, as opposed to something that does not apply cells. So this treatment, Maxx Cell, this is the aspiration needle, which you can see the green needle on the left. It's basically shown to be capable of capturing the highest quality bone. So I like it because it's very easy to use. So it's literally just that needle and trocar, and you're trying to aspirate these live cells and try and have as high concentration as possible to get yourself the highest quality yield. So the way these needles typically work, and you can really think of this as kind of a fancy jam sheeting needle. These needles tend to go in, and the needle breaks a channel in the bone. And then there's bone, obviously there's peripheral blood. So peripheral blood is less viscous compared to the bone. And so fluid's going to follow the path of least resistance. So when the channel's made, and you have a syringe, and you pull, and there's pressure, then the lower viscosity blood is going to preferentially go to the tip of that cannula. And so you're basically going to be aspirating peripheral blood cells instead of your marrow. So you're going to be basically diluting your sample. And so those side holes in the lumen aren't really gathering anything. Everything's going through the end. And so what happens then, you get this contamination, so it's diminished, and that's why you have to do all these additional procedures. You have to put these yields into a centrifuge to try and isolate. So sometimes you get a tenfold higher amount of yield that you have to get. And then at the same time, when you're discarding this excess, these peripheral blood cells, there's also going to be probably some marrow, some stem cells in there that you're going to lose. So the nucleated cell concentration is going to be threefold, so those are peripheral cells, peripheral red blood cells, and the CFU tenfold higher per milliliter. So as the aspiration value also increases, it's really, the good stuff is really going to be in that first cc that you aspirate, and after that's going to be contaminated by peripheral blood. So the technique is really a combination of having this special needle where you go in with the blunt trocar, and then you have the closed tip. So that way that blocks that peripheral blood flow contamination coming from the tip of the needle, and you're able to aspirate the marrow from the side lumens there. And basically you want to go into the marrow, and then you want to just aspirate 1 cc. So essentially you're going to be aspirating the marrow from different points along the way. And so you pull it back a little bit, and you grab another cc, and that try and maximize the concentration of marrow and stem cells you get. So this is a video. So you can see the iliac crest, you put in the trocar, you put the closed tip in there, so now the closed tip at the end, and now you put the syringe on, and you can see now when you aspirate, 1 cc at a time, it's coming in through the lateral portal. So you're aspirating the marrow, you're turning it, you're coming back a little bit, so it's a new point, 1 centimeter proximal, and then do another cc. And so this way you can get the highest number of colony-forming units, you minimize the peripheral contamination, and it's really just very straightforward. It's one stick. And again, the highest colony-forming units right with one device. So when you compare it to centrifuge systems that are out there, in terms of the volume, you can see everything in blue, you have to basically take at least a 60 cc aspirate. So hopefully you can get that much when you're aspirating with your needle, and then you have to spin it down to isolate the marrow. And so you can see much higher peripheral red blood cell count, much lower stem cell count, as you can see there in the second row, because of the contamination. when you compare these side by side again, so the centrifuge versus the Marrow, so again, to aspirate 60 cc's, you get a final volume of 7 cc's, whereas when you're using this technique with this Maxx needle, it's basically 1-to-1. So you just have to aspirate anywhere from 8 to 10 cc's. That's going to be your final concentration, so minimum contamination. The other thing is that this is a closed system, so nothing has to be taken off the field. So you do your needle, you get a syringe on there, and then you can use that right away for whatever you're going to use it for. It doesn't have to be taken off and put in a centrifuge and anything like that. You don't need any additional personnel, so I can do this by myself. You don't have to worry about any machine maintenance or cost for a centrifuge. And again, you can see the concentration is significantly higher. So that's the significance. Is again, it's for what we're using it for, so for foot and ankle fusions, potentially some trauma. This way, we think that we're able to deliver the highest colony-forming units, so minimal contamination. And this is a little busy, but obviously, these substitutes are very costly. So again, the nice thing is that essentially, this is a fancy jam sheeting needle. So you get this, you get these cells, and you combine it, you can build your own scaffold. Most of your hospitals are going to have deals with the scaffolds, with the DBMs, it's maybe a couple $100. Maybe this needle is maybe $1,000, but for most of the products that are out there, you're talking about $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. So it can significantly save costs, and you're getting likely a better product. So this is just a summary slide again. This is it's a 100% closed system, so you don't have to worry about contamination. It's sterile. It gives you the highest regenerative autologous cell count compared to everything else. So this is really an autologous live orthobiologic you can use. It's very easy to use. There's really no processing time. You have the point-of-care therapy. It can be very, can really minimize your costs. The key thing is that you want to do it 1 millimeter aspirations 1 centimeter apart. So essentially you're aspirating from a different point each time. So basically 10 different points each a centimeter apart. And basically this can eliminate, it can really help you concentrate your aspirate because you don't have to lose anything when you're purifying it in centrifuge. So this is at one of the booths. You can go out and look at the needle and look at some of the literature, but I think it's a very easy technique, and I think that if you can do something that's less costly and still give you a better product, then that's a good advantage. All right, so I'll ask our panelists to come forward.